everybody, how's it going? It is Max and Trev with BuzzTox with our Westworld Episode 2 Chestnut analysis. How's it going, Trev?
Good. It was a tasty chestnut. I'll give you that.
Damn straight. And before we get into it, I just want to say thank you all for the immense support on our cover of Westworld. I love hearing all your comments. We love responding and reading all of your comments. We love hearing your opinions. And I want to say, if you make a really compelling argument or you bring something to the table, I will most definitely bring it up in this analysis, and I will definitely give you the credit. And on top of that, keep liking, keep commenting down below, and share it around, because we want to bring more perspectives to the show so we can talk about more things.
Yeah, the show is so new, and it's not like Game of Thrones where there's an existing universe, so anything goes and everything's open to interpretation here.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to talk about. And I think if you're watching Game of Thrones, you should be watching this show. But without wasting any more time, let's get right into it. So we get a shot of Dolores, and we hear a really modulated voice saying, "Wake up,
Dolores."
She pretty much just walks outside and then gets asked, "Do you remember?" I'm convinced this is Bernard. What about you?
Yeah, because for sure it's Bernard. But it seems like he was almost glitching out at us after a little bit. Like, it sounds like Bernard, and then it changes.
Yeah, and I think Bernard is really trying to egg her on in a sense. We get more of a tease throughout the show, but I think "do you remember" really means, her past. Do you remember your treatment? Do you remember, a certain event that took place maybe 30 years ago that they're teasing, which was pretty much a catastrophic event. But it's interesting how Bernard asks her if she remembers, and they immediately flash to William on the train.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to pay attention to these little hints in the show, because it really points out a lot. There's a ton of times in the show where it drops a bomb, and then just by the cut, the next person you see in the frame almost gives you a glimpse into the future of the story.
Exactly. And sometimes even the past, it seems like.
Exactly. So, do you remember? It flashes to William, which makes me think automatically William has a part to play in what happened in the past, because I think William is actually a character from 30 years ago.
Yeah. And we're going to get a taste as to what happened 30 years ago. Because they alluded in the first episode that there was something that kind of went wrong.
Yeah, so then William is sitting on the train, and he's there with a buddy, and a robot comes to him and asks, "Can I take your glass?" The one thing I just want to pick about this is that she definitely seemed more robotic.
Yeah, definitely. Well, see, it's almost like it's hard to argue, because everybody is in service. Like, everybody in the service industry within this, I don't even know what you want to call it, but it's like a corporation or this facility is in service of the guests. So whether they're real or not, it makes no difference at this point. But yes, they're editing, and the way that they're doing it is making it seem like she was very robotic.
Yeah, exactly. So, his friend Bill is obviously really excited about this experience, and he wants William to really learn about himself. And Bill's getting right into it. So right off they get off the train, he grabs a couple of ladies and he walks off.
Ladies and a dude. This guy's going full out.
Oh, he doesn't give a fuck. And then this other robot approaches William, this lovely looking lady, and she asks him some questions. And pretty much it's to gauge what he can deal with in the park. It's pretty much insurance.
Yeah, it's like a psych analysis.
Yeah, so they ask about his medical conditions, many other things, and she questions him about his social anxiety, which obviously is just kind of a tease. You could take it as, but I also thought of it as, he may have some social anxiety, and that might hint to, his relationship with maybe Dolores. Maybe he goes over there and she kind of wins him over because he's never been good with women, and maybe he feels a certain connection with Dolores, which would really make him favor the Westworld over anything else.
Yeah. He seems like he's coming into it, like he's very, very on eggshells as he's going through this. He doesn't know what to make of it. And he's very coy on everything that's suggested to him.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she pretty much offers it up to him, and he says no. And he doesn't even want to change in front of her. He's so uncomfortable with the idea of this whole situation.
Yeah, what I really want to touch on is it's really interesting because this area really reminds me of the underground place in Sublevel 83.
Yeah.
And in the same, I'm talking about, the escalators are around, that kind of stuff. And this is pure speculation, but I think this is 30 years later, because I think this event also resulted in this place being shut down. And then maybe they had to rebuild on top of their little underground lair. And now they have that building on top of the mountain.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you see, I'd have to go back to the first episode now to to describe it. It's almost like you see these escalators coming down, and there's what seems like a globe or almost like an anatomical shape.
Yeah.
In the center. So I thought it was a mall, but I actually kind of got shit in the comments for that. But I'm wondering what this is, and I'm sort of starting to agree with maybe this is like a entombed layer of what it used to be.
Exactly.
Maybe something went bad down there, or they just kind of entombed it to use as storage, as we see in the first episode.
Yeah, I think it definitely has been, abandoned from an event that happened 30 years ago. But then he walks into a room with this lady, and it's almost like a room dedicated to him, and it proves that this is a really rich experience because all the clothing is fitted to him. He picks what he wants to wear in this world. And then he talks about the guns. He asks if she's real, but then he points at the guns and asks if the guns are real.
Yeah.
And she points out that you can't kill anyone you're supposed to. And, initially I thought, these guns are heat signature, like in the movie, where you point it at someone and you can't shoot a real person. But we clearly see the man in black get shot. So I just want to point out that a guy in the comments, I See Spots, told me that the creator of the show said that they use kind of like a BB gun round, if it's pointed at a human.
Oh, I see. So it still hits, but nothing. Yeah, because we do see like his clothes flare up or even get holes in his clothes.
Yeah. So
yeah, that makes sense. That's actually a cool thing.
Yeah, so it's like a more immersive experience. But, you also, if you're in the game, you don't want to get shot because you're going to get a little bit of a sting. But you're not going to die from it.
Paintball.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Nice. That's actually really cool. I never picked up on that.
Yeah, so then, he continues to talk to her, and, he obviously asks if she's real. And she says, does it really matter?
Yeah, so she doesn't really answer this question.
Yeah, and she offers to change him, and, he denies it, just kind of showing that, this guy has such high integrity and like values that, he just can't be a certain way with, these people. And to me, it was obvious that she was a robot.
Yeah, see, it's left to interpretation, but I don't know. We were sort of having this conversation yesterday, and she's almost too aware that she's a robot.
See, I 100% disagree. I think you can't, in this place in the future, you can't have prostitution in a business. It's like, that's ridiculous. She has to be a robot.
But we're talking like Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas sort of has this. Already now, and we're talking about a future where people go to a crazy amusement park to live out their deepest and darkest fantasy. So who knows? And it just seems like I don't want to think this is a theory, but I think it would be weird to have this show dedicated to robots sort of exploring their own morality and their metaphysical existence, and then you have these sub-level of robots before you even get into the game that know they're robots and can answer questions in and around whether or not they're robots or not. It seems weird.
No, but here's the thing. You have to take it with a grain of salt. This could have been 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that...
could have been a part of the problem.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think the fact that she knows that she is a robot is a part of the problem. And granted, in Westworld, the robots need to know that they're not actual robots to make the world more immersive.
Yes, I agree with that.
And they're not aware of their origin. But I wonder which situation is better. A robot knowing that it's a robot, or a robot not knowing it's a robot? Because if you don't know you're actually a robot, then you value being respected, and you value freedom, and you value all these things. Whereas if you know you're a robot, do you feel like you're supposed to serve your master? Because I guess at that level of intelligence, you might want to break out of that.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Because technically, even the Westworld hosts know that they're robots to a certain degree. But then when they're in the game, they're playing a role. Because they can be pulled out at any time and asked like BIOS questions like a computer, and they answer like a robot.
Yeah, but it's almost like they're not even
subservient. Them. Yeah, it's like they have a personality chip. It's kind of hard to explain and hard to differentiate these first, like we'll call them hostess robots that we saw on the train, and we saw that is like outfitting William, versus the actual players of the game, or the NPCs of the game, which are just hosts.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get a shot of Elsie and Bernard. And Elsie, I just want to clarify, is the woman that kissed the prostitute. And they're talking about Abernathy, who I hope returns to the series.
Oh, he's got to.
He has to. And she pretty much assumed that, Abernathy's breach was from the photograph itself.
Yeah.
But what she's saying is that every other android reacts immediately to a situation like that. If you see the photograph, the android would have just malfunctioned immediately. But what blows her mind is that Abernathy actually took it, brought it home, and sat there all night and thought and contemplated about it.
Yeah, and they break instantly, like the guy that with the fly on his face.
Yeah.
They go into something, or it's immediate, whereas he was mulling over. It's almost like he didn't plug into his charging dock because he stayed on the deck the whole night.
Yeah, and it's important because he was actually legitimately thinking. So I want to ask you, why is Abernathy special in this sense?
I don't know. It almost seems like the picture... There's so many layers, man, when it comes to technology. It's so hard to explain. Like, what if the picture's almost like a QR code of patterns, where it's like, okay, this is something from the future, and it tricks his coding into thinking more into what the picture is and starts questioning it. Or it's the general sense, every AI media type thing where the android or the AI starts figuring it out on their own because of past experiences, because of just all these different experiences put together gives them sort of self-aware consciousness, and that's what I think they're leaning towards more as someone hacking him. But I do kind of feel like the picture itself was planted, though.
Yeah. And I think it could have been planted by Ford, but I think we have two different ways of looking at it. I feel like you're looking more at a technology base. I'm looking more at a human base. I think Ford really wants to pursue being God, and he wants to pursue imperfections, which we've seen in the show. And I think he's pursuing on making a real species. And I think what really corrupts Abernathy in this sense and has him, mull it over, it could be his past lives. He's experienced many things, but I think it's really love. And it's all of these feelings that Ford put into him, which makes him more human. So what made him think about it? Well, he was thinking about it because maybe of Dolores. Maybe he wants to protect her. Maybe he's spending time to think about it because he doesn't want to hurt her, and he's mulling over those decisions.
Yeah, it's like that I cannot hurt, but I have to protect. I have to protect, but I cannot hurt, and it keeps mulling over, and then the love factor comes into it, and it just screws up his whole
Exactly, because once you introduce love, and you introduce all these different human emotions, you get, nothing is black and white anymore.
Yeah.
Everything becomes gray. So you get questions, and you get, contemplation, and all of these values make you question your existence, which makes you not a robot anymore.
Yeah, and that's what I think you're getting at, where we're on the same level as agreeing with Ford's God sort of theory. Oh, we even see something right at the end, which we'll get into.
Yeah, and they even say here, like, the error started with Ford. Well, it's funny because they see it as an error because all they want to do is they want to run a park, and they want to make it amusing for the people. But Ford, this is far from an error. To Ford, this is innovation.
Yeah.
To Ford, it's like, oh my God, he's actually thinking and mulling things over. It's going more in his camp of what he wants. Exactly.
And he refuses to waver from this crusade because it's something he knows that once it's started, nobody can stop it. And we see that, obviously, in the next couple of scenes even.
Exactly. So Elsie is freaking out, and she wants to talk to Dolores because she's nervous that whatever Abernathy had could be contagious. And that could be a tease to these violent delights have violent ends. And Bernard immediately dismisses her idea and says that, they already talked to Dolores, and they don't need to talk to Dolores. Which kind of hints at his motivations. So why doesn't he want her to talk to Dolores? Because he's obviously undercover talking to her.
Yeah, I think he's barking up the same tree as she is, but he's just doing it before her, and he doesn't want her stepping on his toes, basically.
Yeah, and then we'll get more into it later in the episode, but, with Bernard, for me, it's what is his motive? Either it's research or it's rebellion. So, is he more on, he has taken an affinity to Ford, so does he want to pursue what Ford wants? Or is it more rebellion if you take the stance that he's actually an android as well?
Well, see, as we open up the episode, we see a lot more layers to Bernard. And it's so hard to articulate where he sits, because he is searching for perfection in the sense that Ford is, but I think he's misguided because he's trying to impress Ford. You know what I mean? Like, he wants to make the perfect, whereas Ford is like, I'm done with perfect. I've done perfection. It's these little intricate mistakes that make perfect, right?
Yep.
At least in his eyes. So I don't know. Like, I really think he's now just curious on what is going on here. It's something that Ford would always deny is happening, and it's something that now has triggered Bernard's curiosity like crazy, where he's having these private discussions with her.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the next scene is Dolores walking down the road, and a modulated voice says, "Remember." Now, this voice is so modulated, you actually can't really tell who it is, but based on Bernard was in the last scene, I'm pretty much guaranteeing that this is Bernard again saying, "Remember."
Yeah.
And she's standing in town, and everyone is dead around her. And Maeve talks to Dolores, and Dolores pretty much just looks at her and says, "These violent delights have violent ends." And she was almost a different character, and then she snapped back into herself and took off.
Yeah.
So first of all, to me, that hints at it being a virus, because they talked about it in the last scene. Abernathy told Dolores, "These violent delights have violent ends," and then Dolores randomly goes up to Maeve and tells her, "These violent delights have violent ends." And I find it interesting how they're also focusing on Maeve in this episode and her issues and her remembering her past.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just think that's kind of, interesting.
Well, it's so weird. So I was listening to something totally unrelated to Westworld or any other stuff we do, and they were talking about the story of Prometheus. So Prometheus was like, I don't know if he was a god himself, but he worked with Zeus and all the pantheon of Greek gods. And Prometheus was the one that gave humans fire. So he went and he stole fire from the gods and gave it to the humans, which then flourished and created humanity as we know it today. And he was obviously punished for that. But I think there's a very Promethean thing that's going on here. Like, Ford gave it to them, and now they're running wild and it's spreading. And we're seeing the very first steps of it spreading to everyone. Obviously through her saying that, but I think there's going to be actions now that spread it, not just the saying.
Yeah, exactly. So this is being spread, and then obviously Bernard seems to have an agenda, because he's telling her to remember, and we're seeing a massacre of people in town, which to me almost hints at that is 30 years ago. That's the event that took place 30 years ago. It's more than a massacre. It's way more than that, but that is almost a hint to what happened.
Yeah, and I do you think it's him talking to her in real time, or it's just one of those things where they do the voiceover and you're saying remember, so we know in the context of, oh, this has happened to her before? I think, because they're always doing voiceovers. Like, do you think he is the one talking to her where she's walking outside to look for what she's looking for?
I think Bernard is trying to bring her sense of humanity to the fold, and I think we're seeing her kind of change and kind of get in touch with her past, while at the same time we're actually seeing the past through William.
Yeah, but they're hiding that voice on purpose. We're thinking it's Bernard because of the things that he said to her before, but there might be more than one influencer.
Most definitely. And it could be Ford,
It could be, yeah.
But then we go to William, and he's now ready to go to Westworld. And they make him choose a hat, either a white hat or a black hat, which to me is obvious, very good or evil.
A very significant scene, though. Or at least for the theory that I have going.
Yeah, and he chooses the white hat. So, I find it funny how we have William the white hat and Bill the black hat. And then they go into, they get ready to go into the park. So we see William kind of open the door and go into almost like, just a nice kind of bar area. And then
it just looks like a more dense saloon.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where all of the guests are, and that's how they get into the park. And it actually is a train. And Bill pretty much just gives him the rundown and says, hey, this place seduces everyone. And he tells William that after this, he's never going to want to leave. And it's going to tell him who he really is.
Yeah.
To me, this definitely foreshadows William's arc.
Oh, yeah. But this cuts into the theory of the Man in Black being William. And it's still, like, I mull over it all the time when I start thinking about Westworld. And I'm trying to think of a different side of it, but I really feel like this is the origins of the Man in Black.
Yeah. And I think this really foreshadows to what Ford said at the end of the episode, where Ford said, people don't go into the park to find out who they are. They go into the park to see who they could really be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what William is. He goes in, he knows who he is. He's a guy with integrity. He's a good guy, whatever. But I think after 30 years, you know, you're a great guy. But when you go into the park, you can be whoever the hell you want to be. And, you know, if you go in and you kill a bunch of people and you go in the next day and they're all alive, you lose your sense of consequence.
Exactly. And he says something which we'll cover a little bit later that's like very strongly pointing in this direction. It was something I actually texted you after we watched the episode.
Yeah.
Because it was like, whoa, that's mind-blowing. He said that straight up.
And this is the show hinting at you. What does it do after this scene with William, talking about him changing? It cuts to the Man in Black.
Yeah.
So it hints to who he is. And we also, I did some comparison here. I can't really make out if he has a mole on his cheek like the William actor, but they both have blue eyes.
Yeah.
So it's not a theory that can easily be dismissed.
See, I see a scene later on when he's sitting with that guy that he saved from the hanging, where he's sitting in his town, and they do a close-up on his face, and he does have a mole, but it's not darkened. And this is getting into like such craziness, like where we're zooming in on his face.
It's so over the top.
But it's like,
look at the mole on his face.
But they couldn't be so obvious about it because I think people would figure it out right away. Right? Again, this is still a theory. I want to see someone in the comments say like, this is why he's not, or I want to see something that says this is why he's not, to throw me off. But man, there's a lot of arrows pointing in this direction for me.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, the Man in Black goes in and all these guys are about to hang a man. So the Black Cat walks in and the Man in Black ends up killing everybody, and then he speaks to the man that they're about to hang. And it seems like the Man in Black has known him in a past experience. Obviously, the man who's being hung doesn't know who he is because their memories are erased.
Yeah, and he knows him from that, I'm probably mispronouncing him, Dizzy, which is the guy he scalped.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I think throughout the episode you see how familiar the Man in Black is with this person. And it just makes me so confident that I'm almost going to guarantee it this season, you are going to see William meet this guy. And
yeah, you're going to see his role before. I agree with that.
Yeah, you're going to see William meet this guy, and you're actually going to see them form a legitimate friendship. And I think it's going to be a nice contrast to the way the Man in Black treats him now.
Yeah, but like, I wonder if they're shooting themselves in the foot, because I think I'm not the only one, and we're not the only one talking about the Man in Black is William. So were they going to carry two timelines at the same time, where we think that William's in the same world as the breakdowns now, or there's two simultaneous breakdowns in this 30-year mark where we think that they're at the same time?
I have no idea, but I think if they do it, it's going to be self-contained to season 1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and then everything will catch up. We have to see what motivates the Man in Black and why he is the way he is.
Yeah.
So I think it's an awesome way to do it.
Yeah, but right now his motivations are really focused on getting to the deepest part of the game.
Very deep.
Right. So I have no idea what this game could be.
Yeah, like I can't, the faintest idea.
But I just want to talk about who, like the Man in Black's character, because, you know, we see him going around killing all these people, and it makes us think that he's a bad guy. But you got to think of his situation, right? He's been coming here a lot, and, you know, if you go there and you kill a bunch of people and you leave and you come back the next day and they're all there, you lose your sense of consequences, which is exactly what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
And it's like a video game, you know? You can kill all those people, you don't think anything of it because you're going to see them the next day.
Yeah, he's playing GTA on a whole different level.
Exactly. So he could be the nicest guy ever outside of the game.
Yeah, he's just one of those speedrunner guys.
Exactly. And, you know, he realizes that this is all artificial, and he's okay with that. But from our point of view, these people seem so real. And it obviously affected him at the start if he is William. But after, like, so long, seeing nothing really change, it really could shape, you know, how you react with the world.
Yeah, but when we're talking about the game, that's what we have to figure out, because he seems like he's not only just a guy like on a pleasure cruise. He seems like a man on a mission, or like a crusade almost.
Yes.
Like he's really vying for this, almost like he doesn't care about the consequences of what he's doing. We see the security detail guy get an alert saying, hey, like, this guy's kind of getting a little rowdy. Do you want me to cut him off or slow him down? And he's like, no, this man gets anything he wants. So it's like, well, what is he? Is he the, like, frequent flyer? He's got all the points. He's been there the most. Or is he a big-time investor? What is it about this guy that he gets carte blanche over everybody, even though he's doing the craziest shit? And if the maze was meant to be hidden, then, like, he's getting a little bit too close to the sun here.
Yeah, and by the end of this, I got some crazy-ass predictions for the Man in Black, by the way. But let's go over to Maeve.
Yeah, Maeve was badass in this episode.
Yeah, so Maeve is talking to a man, and, he's not very enthused, and he ends up rejecting her. And she flashes back to a previous experience. We see natives killing horses and men, and she's being sliced along the head.
Yeah, she's like pre-scalped.
Yeah, exactly. She's pre-scalped. So that just made me raise the question: why are the natives scalping her? Is it just that's what natives do? I'm ignorant to this point. Unfortunately, I forget. Do natives scalp people? Did they?
Yeah, in war though.
In war,
right?
Okay. Because I just want to identify: is this just the natives being programmed to do what they're supposed to do, or is this the natives maybe being programmed to also pursue the treasure?
Yeah, we don't know, but we don't know if those natives were hosts or not. There might have been actual guests that wanted to dress up like natives and act like natives.
It could be, but I'm leaning more towards host. Host.
Yeah, but it was a scenario definitely that they were the collateral damage in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But she's just kind of standing around in the prostitution house, so they bump her up. They bump up her aggression to try and get her numbers up.
They bring her back to maintenance, which is like, it's a hard scene to explain because it's in the bar. There's that shy guy. She loses it because she starts breaking down. Then they do the flashes of her getting scalped, and then boom, she's back in maintenance. And then she's being bumped up aggressive-wise by what seems like another little political thing where there's like the behavior guys, there's the story guys, there's all these different layers of the game. Programmers, like the development team, if you will.
Yeah, and I just find it really interesting how, it deals with the idea that, they're all livestock and they're going to decommission her if she doesn't hit her numbers. She's a prostitute, so... Yeah,
which seems crazy because she's been there forever.
Yeah, so I just found that interesting. But even more interesting, Ford visits Bernard. And, Bernard tells him that, you taught me how to make these, androids, but you didn't tell me how hard it is to turn them off.
Exactly.
So it almost kind of hints to, it's hard to turn off something so human.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I said. Remember when he looked like he was having a hard time putting Abernathy away? Yeah. He whispered at least what it seemed like words of encouragement to him, saying like it'll be all right or something, maybe even more diabolic than that.
Yeah, exactly. He whispered to him, which could really speak to Bernard. I think Bernard's at the point now where, he deals with these things every day, and I think he's maybe becoming more sympathetic towards them, and we're seeing that through Daenerys, maybe.
Daenerys.
Oh man!
Oh, you're jumping ship.
Oh, Dolores, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna leave that in.
Yeah, you might have to.
But then Ford goes on and says that being God means you have to be acquainted with the devil, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I think Ford is an amazing character, by the way. I just want to throw that out there.
Ford is awesome. He's the clock master. He's the Geppetto of all these things, man.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Because he could be thrown as a villain, but I love the guy. I think he's actually a good guy. He
seems neutral though,
and he seems damaged.
Yeah, he seems like feels guilty in a sense. There's guilt, and he's goddamn, he's an amazing actor. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's obviously hidden motives, but there seems like there's a little bit of guilt in everything that he does.
Yeah.
He almost hesitates to answer questions about it, and he cringes almost when people question him on his designs and stuff like that, because he's like, guys, you don't even realize what this is all about.
Yeah, exactly. And he assumes something is wrong with Bernard, which, because he says he knows how Bernard's head works, which, I could be overanalyzing. But it could be hinting at a Bernard origin. Ford could have given him an artificial backstory. Like he had a family that died, and now the only purpose he serves really is up here helping Ford create Westworld, because he was looking at that image of the boy, you know.
It calls into question so many things. Like, what would be the point for humans to a certain degree if they had them this good? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it goes that far outwards, where there's people working outside on the AIs, and they themselves are even higher AIs, and like it gets so crazy, and that's what I loved about this show.
Well, I think the difference is, and this may grow throughout the series, but you know, with real people, there's vision. Ford has a vision of what he wants out of Westworld, and Bernard is kind of the guy who just supports Ford and does what he says, it seems like.
Yeah.
He may have his own agenda, but he doesn't have the vision that Ford has for this park.
But he almost has like programmed curiosity, right? Like he's trying to get to the bottom of things on his own too, though, which the guy that Ford is would almost encourage.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Bernard continues to tell Ford that Abernathy, you know, for him to be so messed up, he would have to been given outside information. And you know, Ford asks if it's sabotage, and you know, I have no question Ford is behind this. Like, Ford is the reason for Abernathy's downfall.
Directly or indirectly, though?
I think the update, and I think he purposely did it to pursue a more realistic creation.
See, I think he just set fire, and Abernathy was the first blowout, basically.
Yeah, I think he may have given Abernathy, you know, like I was talking about before, a sense of a human feeling like love. And that feeling can't really be calculated. And I think that is what led to Abernathy's, you know, issue or breakdown. And I think Ford definitely did that. And Ford also goes on to say that a particular monk who lived a long time ago would have burned him and Bernard at the stake. And he goes on to talk about how they study witchcraft. And he always talks about witchcraft. And he says that they create life out of chaos. And I just think it's interesting how Ford always goes back to these religious concepts.
Yeah, he's very religious, or religious knowledgeable.
Yeah, so it just shows, you know, it shows what he may want for the park in the future, and it also shows what his motivation might be for Westworld in the future. So moving on, William and Bill arrive in Westworld, and William gets shoved like Teddy, like exactly like Teddy.
Same dude, he runs into the same guy.
Exactly the same guy, and both of them show respect, sorry, like, and they move on. And they're walking through town, and they're not being recruited to seek a wanted man. They're actually being recruited for a war by different people, which just shows the difference in the world. And an old man also falls off a wagon, and William tries to help him, and Bill kind of brushes it off because, you know, it's like a video game. They don't want to start a quest. Don't help the man. Fuck off. We're going to have a drink. We're going to have some fun, and then we can, you know, deal with that kind of stuff. But it just shows that William can't detach himself from this artificial reality.
No, he's being total himself. He's not letting go of anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, the fact that, like, everything about this world is different, and I don't think that changes overnight.
Yeah, and that's what leads to thinking that this is the different timeline.
And they've showed that in episode 1. We've seen the world repeat 3 different times. Teddy walks into town, gets shoved, goes to the bar, goes to see Dolores, you know? There's similar beats, and the guys were always there handing out wanted posters for that guy. And the fact that it's different here shows that, you know, it's a different time period. Because Lee, the story guy, he can't change the whole story overnight.
Yeah, even though there was talk about changing the whole story in the first one, it just seems... Well, yeah, see, that's another thing, though.
All he did was bump up the wanted man 2 weeks early, I believe.
Yeah, but Buddy got popped. So if Buddy gets popped in the throat because of that story failure in the first one, how long is it before he's fixed up and ready to go? So it's still like he could have been on decommission, and they have to put in, okay, well, we need a story at the beginning of the train exit.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I almost think that was done
know.
to throw us for a loop.
Yeah, I'm still with it. That's not a strong enough argument for me. Like, it really seems like a different timeline.
Yeah, and then we snap to Dolores, and she's kind of saddling up her horse, and she kind of looks at herself in the reflection. This seems really stupid, but to me, I just have to get it off my chest, or else I'll regret it. It seems like she's staring at a reflection of herself that looks like the side of a modern building.
Yeah, because I was wondering if they held conference in that, behind that glass.
I don't even understand. That is not from that time period. It's a whole pane of glass that she can see her whole reflection. So I just don't, to me it's a futuristic glass side of the building. I just wanted to draw attention to that because it really threw me for a loop.
But when she's talking to Bernard, it even seems like they're in the basement of that place, and it's modernized with that glass. That's what I thought. I thought she's like, oh, I can see something going on behind the glass.
Yeah.
Bernard's calling me in.
Yeah, it seemed like that too, yeah. So he was talking to her, and, you know, he made a point to make her promise to not tell anyone. And, you know, he's just fascinated by her because she thinks differently, and he just finds her fascinating. And, you know, Dolores asks if she's done anything wrong. And then she asks Bernard if he's done anything wrong.
Yeah, and that freaks him out.
And that freaked him the fuck out because she obviously is thinking different. And just her asking questions made him delete the data of the whole conversation.
Yeah, but see, this would break the theory then. If Bernard actually did call her in that timeline, then it would be that William is on the same timeline as the current breakdowns. So it has to be something else. Or
maybe we're still getting two separate timelines, but they're just like, that's just an error. That's just Dolores.
Oh man, see, it goes crazy with the different layers here.
That's just Dolores staying at herself from the past. I still think there's multiple timelines.
Yeah, because if you look at the cut though, it's she's looking at glass, and then it pans up to like modern glass of the interrogation room.
Yeah, I think that's just how they cut in between the future scene and the past scene. But yeah, I think Bernard, you know, I think he knows that her core code has been broken. We learned that in the first episode when she killed the fly. Yeah, and she most definitely is different because she's the oldest android in the park, and she's had the most repairs. So we'll see where he can go with that. But we go on to Maeve, and she is way more aggressive. She comes onto a woman like crazy. Yeah. And, you know, she ends up talking to the other prostitute about bad dreams because she wasn't sleeping. And Maeve tells her that what she does is she closes her eyes and counts down from 3, and that wakes herself up.
Yeah, this was like the lucid dreaming thing that that I was mentioning in the first video, where people do this in real life as like tactics to practice lucid dreaming, so that when you can wake yourself up in a dream, you have control over yourself in the dream world.
Yeah, and I think, you know, these androids or robots or whatever, they were programmed to listen and to learn, and then, you know, to kind of take that and react.
Yeah.
And I think in that sense it backfires because Elsie, the woman on the other end, she's almost reprogrammed Maeve to count down from 3 every time she's in a bad experience now.
Yeah, mixed with the bump up of aggression.
Yeah, so now Maeve has almost reprogrammed herself to wake up anytime she wants, which goes against her core code.
Exactly.
And just a little alteration of Elsie counting down from 3, 3, 2, 1, and Maeve waking up and finally going to the Westworld, the world that she wants to be in, makes her change her own programming and to achieve what she wants. So I think that's interesting.
Well, yeah, she's waking herself up out of sleep mode.
Yeah.
No less. Like, it's not just she's programmed to go to sleep because it's nighttime. She's waking herself out of sleep mode. Like robotic sleep mode. So it's crazy.
Yeah, so it's almost showing that these robots are now so intelligent that they can take these experiences and alter their own core code. And then Maeve flashes to a moment in her past, and she seems kind of like startled. And then Teddy actually asks her if she's okay. The one thing I want to point out is Teddy seems like a very different character. He's a lot more serious.
Well, he's wearing a black hat, but I don't know if that's significant. I can't remember what kind of hat he's wearing when he first shows up.
Okay, but yeah,
in like episode 1. But yeah, he's the barfly.
Right, because this does really throw me off because, you know, I assume that this is the past. This is 30 years ago. Okay.
No, I think this is back to normal time. That's what I mean. It's so hard to differentiate the timelines.
I think this is the past timeline because Teddy is different.
No, it can't be though, because she would have had Violent Delights end violently. Whispered to her. That's why she's having the flashbacks. That happened in the breakdown timeline, whereas William seems like he's upstairs with the other hooker lady.
Fuck,
that's a different timeline.
I don't even know anymore, man.
It's hard to argue this logic because there's so many things going on all at once, and I don't think we're supposed to think this far in advance. But I really feel, and I think it's not just us. I think there's a lot of people saying now that is the case, that he is the Man in Black, but they have to argue with these timelines switching back and forth constantly.
Yeah. So, anyways, we see that Maeve isn't really doing anything. So Ashley, who is actually a man, played by Luke Hemsworth, one of the Hemsworth brothers, just calls her an old unit, and they plan to decommission her tomorrow. And then it snaps to Bernard and Theresa. They have a scene together, and they have a relationship. And it really just summarizes things we know. So we go back to Westworld, and William and Bill are having dinner. And Bill gets a bit reckless, pulls out a gun to try and prove that, this is an artificial reality. And the old man comes back, and he wants to offer them a quest to get a map. And Bill stabs him in the hand, and then they all piss off. Yeah. And then Bill has a giant gangbang, and William wouldn't call him a friend. So, that kind of hints at their relationship. They're not really friends. They may be co-workers, a distant friend, or maybe a distant family member.
Yeah, something. It seems almost like he could be like his supervisor or something like that. He's just kind of an asshole to him all the time.
Yeah, so then the prostitute starts to come on to him, and he turns her down because he says he had someone at home. And she says that real love is worth waiting for. Now, I want to run an idea by you. I found this really fascinating. So I feel like he hasn't really grasped that he's in an artificial reality. Like, he can't not treat her with respect. And I honestly feel like he is lying, saying that he has someone at home. I don't think he does. But I think her saying that real love is worth waiting for really foreshadows him and Dolores.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, I think they will fall in love. And, love is worth waiting for. The Man in Black comes back 30 years later, and he's still visiting Dolores.
Yeah.
But it's tragic in a sense, because every time he comes back to see her, she forgets him. So he keeps on waiting. So, I find it interesting. Maybe the end of the game is to be a part of the game.
Yeah, like what he's searching for kind of thing?
Yeah, like what he is searching for in that maze is he is searching to be able to never leave again, which is what he says. He says, I'm never leaving. And he wants to, seek the end of the game so he can be a part of it. And then Dolores will actually love him back forever.
Or maybe it's like something we don't even know, like a contest where if you get to a certain point, then you have like forever status.
Yeah, and you get recreated with your DNA and your likeness and your memories and everything, and get put into the world.
Yeah, but do you think this is a Ford programmed game? Or the writers? Or it's something that's been hidden by an unseen force?
I don't know.
That's what's so crazy about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it's Ford, then he's almost leaving hints and clues as to there's sort of like a salvation within this game somewhere, but you gotta go deep, and it's hidden behind really, really dark shit.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, we go on to Lee, and he's the storyteller, the writer, and he freaks out because of one of the android's noses. So he breaks it, and then he wants an additional 50 hosts for the storyline he now wants, but only 20 is approved. And we find out that Ford himself actually hasn't approved the story.
Yeah.
So Lee is really just confident that his idea is going to work.
That's what leads me back to, like, do you think Ford has something to do with the maze game? Because it seems like he has something on every level, and he seems like he has a lot of secrets. So, is it Ford or is it someone else?
I have no idea, but I find Ford really interesting because it snaps immediately back to Ford, and he's going through an elevator up to Westworld.
Yeah, he goes through like a maintenance elevator to the middle of the desert.
Yeah, and it takes him to the middle of nowhere, and it's actually called Nowhere. And I just want to say, before we analyze it, that the music is amazing. And it's like really tragic, in a sense. And like Anthony Hopkins' like performance as Ford was amazing. He made you like really sympathize with him, even though he like could be the bad guy in quotations.
Yeah. Well, he's a top shelf actor. Like, it doesn't really get much better than Anthony Hopkins. That's what's so awesome, that they have him for this.
Yeah, exactly. And he gets there and he's walking and he sees a boy and he asks if he's lost. And Ford just tells him that he strayed too far from where he's supposed to be, and he assumes that the boy is in the same situation.
Mm.
And I think that quote really says who Ford is, but not from the trail, but of his life. I think he strayed too far from where he wanted to be in his life. And his life now isn't really what he expected.
Yeah, like he's going here for, how do I put this, like Fortress of Solitude style stuff. He's going here to reflect, he's going here to think, and we see in the final shot why he actually went there. It's like it is his salvation zone. It keeps him grounded, and maybe he is somewhat of a religious guy.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting is, him and the boy have the same accent, and they agree on a lot of things,
They're dressed exactly the same, too.
Yeah, and they say that, they believe that only boring people don't feel boredom. And they joke about that, so he offers to go on a walk with, he offers the boy to go on a walk with him, and they do. And this just makes me think that, Ford is a really lonely man. And I think in episode 1 we see him talking to, that first model bot in Sublevel 83. And he caused like a breach and made them go downstairs to check up on it, but it was just him wanting to talk to this robot.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think this could be, a lot of people are saying that it's the recreation of himself. I don't think so. I think it's really just a son that he always wanted but never had, or something like that. And I think him saying that he strayed too far from the path he wanted to be on just says that he really wanted to pursue a family and love and all these different values, and he can't do that. So what does he do? He puts it in his creations.
Yeah, and that's what's making him feel so, I don't even know what word you would use here. Like, he feels so empty or hollow, and that's why no matter what he does to create as many friends as he could possibly have, or as many family members as he possibly could, they don't seem human enough to him because they're all too perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So he keeps pursuing this imperfection to try and pursue or fill the hole that he was never able to fill in his life.
Yeah. Well, then the maze could be very well him then, because the man in the maze is a symbol of like the paths that you would walk in life.
Yeah, it's like a man stuck in the center of something that's inescapable.
Yeah, but there's with so many options.
Yeah, exactly. So we flash to the Man in Black, and he goes to that man's home. So I think cuts here are really important because it's like the Man in Black also strayed too far from the path that he wanted to be on. So you could almost reflect that with William, like based on who William was. He strayed too far from the path, and now he's the Man in Black.
Or he's just spent 30 years not figuring this out, and now he knows what the true path is.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah, he's on the path to find who he wants to be, or like his goal or whatever.
Or whatever this is. Like maybe he's so obsessed with this maze or the central levels of the game, because it's his salvation. It's like the reverse of Ford, where we think God and devil because of the contrast between them. I think there's something to it where he's searching for salvation in himself and within this game.
Yeah, exactly. The Man in Black, he goes into detail with this guy on how well he knows him. And he goes into very detailed descriptions on him, like they were best friends back in the day. And I think that just hints to us seeing maybe William with him, if William is in fact him in the past. And I think it just shows, the Man in Black has been here so often. Like, he does see him as a best friend, but he knows the consequences of what he does in this situation doesn't matter. So if he kills him, it doesn't matter. He can see him again in the next thing, right? And he doesn't even remember him anyway. So, he wants the maze, and, the guy calls backup, and, obviously the Man in Black knew that, so he killed the bartender, and there's this huge shooting. And while outside of Westworld, they almost want to stop the Man in Black because he's killed a whole posse, whereas Ashley, who is one of the Hemsworth brothers, says that he can have whatever he wants. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Very intriguing scene.
yeah. So
'Cause who is this guy? Like, why would he get that carte blanche?
I don't know, and they're watching him, which is interesting, and they let him pursue what he wants, which is obviously to find the end of the game. And then the Man in Black, you know, threatens his family. He dances with the wife and then kills her. And he said something really interesting when he said, when you guys suffer, it's when you're most real.
Exactly. Huge quote here.
Yeah, which is his pursuit of emotion, which you could say that with Daenerys. Like, he loves her
Man.
he loves her so much.
You're on fire with Daenerys.
Did I really say that again?
Yes.
Dolores! God damn it. Ah! So you could even say that about Dolores, that, you know, he loves her so much and cares about her that he wants to really see true emotion from her. So the only way he can do that is really be corrupted and, you know, treat her like shit.
Well, here's the thing. So we have to agree on this, because this is sort of what makes or breaks the theory. They zoom in on this guy. He's shooting up the posse. Someone alerts them to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they watch his every move? Because this is where I sort of branch off on this theory, because he said this opens up a lot. When you're suffering, that means you're the most real.
Right.
We see the scene with him at the beginning, the awful scene where it seems like he takes advantage of Dolores.
Yes.
Could it be that he staged that in order to bring her off camera so that he could be real with her?
Most definitely.
Right? And at the same time, all these things, he gets information out of people when they're suffering as well,
Yeah.
as we see when he finally gets it out of the daughter.
Exactly. But what's interesting is the daughter actually doesn't show emotion in this part. She goes monotone and she says, "Follow the blood of Aurora to the place where the snake lays his eggs." But she also says that the maze isn't made for him. So I don't know what that means. But we do get a hint at where the snake lays its eggs later in the episode, where Ford is. And, you know, speaking of the snake lays its eggs, we get a cut immediately to Ford with the kid. And the boy points out that, you know, they're in nowhere. Whereas Ford points out that, you know, how can it be nowhere if the land is so full?
Yeah.
And he really makes the boy focus and says, he points out the white church bells. And what's interesting is that there's no church there. But the boy agrees that he hears the church bells, which obviously points to, I think, Ford is controlling the boy to hear these church bells.
Yeah.
Because he controls the boy and he controls the snake. And I think he wants that interaction with the boy, so he makes him hear those church bells.
Yeah. Could this be the center of the maze, though?
It most definitely could be. Because, you know, him saying that he hears the church bells further hints at what he wants for this world. He doesn't want another story, he wants religion. He wants another aspect of human life projected into this world. And then we also get a hint of the Black Tower, which also has a cross on it, which hints even more at, you know, religion in this world. And good and evil.
It looks like an almost built chapel to me, and that's just the tower of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I found it interesting how he says, hear the sounds of the white church, wherever in the foreground there's a black, seems to be, you know, whatever you said, I forget, what did you say?
It's like it could almost be like a chapel.
A black chapel, which almost shows like black versus white, good versus evil. It's almost like the hats, black or white. So it's almost like multiplayer in a sense, where they could make it like player versus player.
Yeah, oh man. But he's definitely edging himself towards like a religious thing, which is so fucked up if you think about it, because it's in this lawless, anything goes place, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's a weird place to put it.
And religion can really bring the androids a long way, questioning who they are, where they came from, how they exist. And it can also create a lot of conflict.
Well, morality, for one.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot to it. And then, you know, Ford dismisses the boy.
And pauses the snake.
Pauses the snake and tells the boy to leave, and he leaves, and he's done his interaction, which kind of shows that he is God of this world, and he really wants to make the most realistic world as possible. And then it snaps to Bernard, and he's with Theresa, and they're just, having some fun. And, it's just further character development. I don't really think there's anything really to go into, but it was just nice to see these characters develop.
Well, yeah, because she seemed like an awful bitch to all the staff, and he seemed like sort of like do what she says. And then we learn, yeah, behind closed doors they're bumping junk.
Speaking of bumping, they bump the emotional acuity of Maeve.
Yeah.
And, they talk about the concept of dreams. And, Elsie says that they don't make robots dream, but they give them the concept of nightmares. Just in case if they fuck up, then, the robots can blame, whatever they saw as a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then we see her count down from 3. Which, definitely hints at, just the fact that Elsie is counting down from 3 makes Maeve take that as a concept, and she does it herself, which makes her change her own code.
Yeah, but that's the same thing that happened with Dolores earlier. She was almost daydreaming, or day nightmaring, if you will, and she saw that awful scene of a total anarchy, dead bodies in the street, a total massacre at her feet.
Yeah.
So she's been there, and she's now dreaming during the day.
Yeah, exactly. So since that bump, we see Maeve sweet-talking a guy, and she's just doing a bang-up job. And Teddy tells her after that she convinced him, the guy that she totally seduced. And then they end up talking about their sins. And, she says that her sins leave a man still drawing breath, unlike Teddy, which kind of hints that Teddy's kind of like a killer.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, the black hat. I think he was a black hat in this.
Oh, yeah?
So, I don't know. It's so... Teddy's fucking me up on this timeline thing.
I know. Me too.
Because he went into the bar the first time. So, like, he's the wrench in the gear and all this theory stuff.
Because he's acting different in this scene, too.
Yeah.
Like, he's a totally different character. And then he gets shot and killed, which I freaking loved. Because, like, you get to know Teddy in the first episode, and then in the next episode, he's so he's just nothing. He's so insignificant to the story.
Yeah, I don't remember his name in the comments, but he made a funny joke, like, oh my god, they killed Teddy. Almost like South Park Kenny. Like, that is what he is. Do you think he's going to die in every episode for, like, the foreseeable future?
Maybe, but I thought it teased at something. Like, they just shot Teddy in a bar for no reason, and I think that proves his insignificance in this timeline. And I think they're going to take Teddy and they're going to form him into a different story arc with Dolores. But since Maeve's storyline is weaved in with Teddy, we could almost say that everything that's going on with Maeve now is in the past. And 30 years later, we see Maeve in the first episode, where she seems very aware of her surroundings and very self-control, like the way she kills the criminals going into her brothel, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like this whole episode we're in the past, except for when Dolores gets the gun, and we're experiencing what happened in the past, and we're experiencing Maeve's her concept of reality and her discovering her reality 30 years ago.
That could be it. She could be waking up 30 years ago.
Because I think like it has to be. Because to me, Teddy is so different, and there's so many different little nips here that I think that this is Maeve 30 years ago.
And we even know Teddy's different even from the first episode, because those guys say like, "Oh, this guy showed me like a fun time."
Yeah.
Where he wasn't the innocent boy looking out for Dolores.
Yeah,
before.
I know. And then
oh man,
fuck,
it's a hard to keep track of.
I know. And then Maeve dreams of her, or nightmares of her daughter and her being scalped by the native, and we see a man on a horse, which presumably is the man in black, and he's killing all of them. But we see him get shot and fall off the horse, and then she runs into the home, gets her gun, and we see this native kind of following them. He's looking through the windows,
which looks totally badass.
Yeah. But what I don't understand is he kind of goes to open the door, and then he changes into the man in black as the door opens.
Yeah.
Which is symbolism for something, but I don't have anything.
I'd actually like to look at that scene again, because I want to know if I see something. But logically he could have maybe killed the guy, or logically he could be working with the guy, or it's a symbolism thing, like you said, where she thought it was a native white and black guy, which is another symbolism, mind you, because the guy's painted half white and half black.
Yeah.
From head to toe, and then he turns into the man in black. So, man, it's it's really digging up her side of things.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see like where she lies in the whole thing. Because if this is 30 years ago and she's the breakdown, I think they would have decommissioned her. So that's what makes me think this is this timeline.
I don't know. But then, she remembers to count back down from 3. And she wakes up during an operation.
Yeah.
And this is a big deal because these guys are freaking the fuck out.
Yeah. And that's what's so awesome about this scene, because they are freaking out, because they don't want to get in trouble, just like any low workers would want to do. If they broke a vase at a museum, they try and glue it back
just
together
put it back,
because they don't want to lose their jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
So they wouldn't report any messed up things, and that's why I still think the Maeve story, in part, is in this timeline, because this waking up moment happened after she was whispered the violent delights thing.
Fuck, I don't even know anymore, dude.
It's hard, but I really think she's in this timeline, and that's why, because that was such a break bad moment where she wakes herself up out of sleep mode. And that guy swears he put her in sleep mode, and he did, but there's no believing that guy. If you were the other guy who just got killed. Alright, we see Teddy getting cleaned up, like that's crazy.
Yeah, and then she goes on a little walk through the place, and we see her kind of walk into a concentration camp-esque robot washing area, which is just terrible. But I like it. I appreciate it in a sense for how horrible it is. Really hits you with the feels. Well, because she has to you have to see it from the perspective of the robot, seeing this is how we're treated, right? Yeah, exactly. And then we see Teddy all shot up, staring at her.
Oh yeah.
Through the glass. So that's terrible. And then we get an immediate shot of Dolores walking outside and digs up a gun, which almost like the cut there represents, how horrible they're treated. And then we see one of their own getting a gun.
Yeah.
And no doubt in my mind, this is a real gun.
Oh, 100%.
It has to be. So who put it there? It could. I'm sure it's Bernard. Who else? Do you have any other ideas? Or Ford?
I can't say who, but I know it's the same person that buried the picture.
Right. Because you're bringing a gun into this world. So it's not good for investors. It's not good for management. Because it could really fuck up everything if a guest actually dies. So it has to be somebody with a true motive to ruin the park or something. I don't even understand.
Yeah, like an outside force trying to break these things.
Yeah, so obviously she's being steered to kill somebody.
But she's also being controlled to do this.
Yeah, so it's who would she have to kill? The only person I can think of is the Man in Black, but I don't think that makes a lot of sense at this point. Well, it's one of those things this is something we can't really analyze. We need more pieces of the puzzle. But anyways, we go back outside and we see Lee, the storyteller, or writer. He's presenting his story. And, he really stresses that, the narrative helps the guest getting to know themselves. And Ford comes out with an eloquent speech. I think I was in tears. This guy did an amazing job. So he told Lee that he doesn't see the point of what Westworld is. He says, it's not about giving guests what they think they want, like cheap thrills and scares and horror. He says the guests come because of the subtleties and an experience that they could only find in this world. They can experience love and all these other things that they can take from this world. And while he's saying this, it flashes to Dolores and William and him picking up the can and giving it to her. And he says that people already know themselves. But he said they want a glimpse at who they could be. And, Ford says the storyline isn't going to fly. And, he told Bernard not to worry because he's also working on something original. So, I just want to delve into this because I find it interesting how the first episode was called The Original. And we tagged that as Dolores. Dolores is the original. She is the original android, right? And Ford is also working on something original. So I thought it was just an interesting word choice there. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. You take anything from that?
Yeah, it definitely means something. Because this is what he's working on. That's what Chestnut means as well. Like a squirrel has buried his chestnut is the context I think it means.
That's great, because I think you're the only one in all of the internet that have actually figured out what chestnut means to this episode.
That's what I think. It's like a squirrel that buries his nut, and it's like his prized thing. and that's the one he's been saving.
Right, exactly. So I think we have no doubt, the original thing that Ford is working on is religion in the park. Because it's not a storyline, it's not a new cast of characters, it's just a concept that makes the world more real. And then as, William giving Dolores this can, to me it really compares him to Teddy and to the Man in Black. All these three are comparable. So now, episode 3, I'm really going to have to analyze this because my gears are all fucked up now, man. I don't know what timeline's which. I'm all messed up. We got to reanalyze this.
Yeah, it's hard. In my eyes, William is the first to ever pick up the can for her.
Yes.
We see Teddy do it, but I think Teddy's programmed to distract Dolores from maybe a previous breakdown because of William.
Okay.
Right? He's like a fail-safe to keep her distracted. But William is the Man in Black, so he knows of these things, and that's why it was so sentimental when he picked up the can and said, I can't make it tonight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. I approached this whole analysis with the basis that William was the first one to give the can to Dolores, and I think you're going to see these two fall in love if I can actually prove that. This is the past. And I think Dolores actually fell in love with William, and they did something crazy together 30 years ago. And I think Teddy is the recreation of William and who he is to kind of fill that void in Dolores' story.
Yeah.
And, when the Man in Black comes, 30 years later, yeah, he does. He gives the can to Dolores almost like he's missed her and he hasn't seen her in so long.
Maybe that's what the breakdown is. Maybe that there was such an emotional response between him and Dolores that the love broke the code back then, and they needed to program her differently, and they maybe banned William from coming back, or they said you cannot do this timeline, and he was like, shit, like I have to get it a different way, and always came back as a black hat. But I just looked up something different. I looked up as a saying chestnut, just to confirm. So maybe this makes a little bit more sense. Because it says, that old chestnut. This is an old saying. Something so often repeated, it has become tiresome. So I think that's more fitting for the episode. Whereas that Lee's guy's trying to do the same thing over and over and over again. These new stories, these new things, all these new scenarios, even though they're old and tiresome.
Yeah, man.
Everyone's lived out the cowboy fantasy there.
Exactly.
Whereas Ford is saying it's not about the cowboy fantasy. It's about the subtlety. It's about the humanness of this place.
Yeah, they keep speaking to, the Man in Black. He keeps coming back for the same experience with Dolores just because he loves her, right?
Yeah.
And, I find it really interesting if Teddy really is the younger version of the Man in Black. I find it interesting how every time he wants to be with the woman he loves, he has to kill his old self.
Oh, yeah, see, that's another really good symbolism. So you said Teddy, but you meant, so if William is the younger version
of the Man in Black. Because
yes.
I think Teddy is the recreation of William.
Yes.
And I think the Man in Black is 30 years older William. And I think it's interesting how, for him to pursue what he wants, every time he has to kill his old self to get with the woman he loves.
Yeah.
And the man who he used to be was, cowering, nice. He had high integrity. He, all of these things. But unfortunately, being that person doesn't get the emotional move you want from these androids.
Exactly.
So he has to kill his past self and take on the mantle to be, with the woman he wants in kind of a tragic, terrible way.
Yeah. And that's why, I don't know why he gets full reign of the park. But that's another reason why I really think that the love thing broke it down that many years ago.
Yeah, so I think that whole thing is really interesting. This whole episode has just been a wow. Did you think that there would be 2 different timelines with this show?
No, like mind bender. It's a mind bender to talk about it.
Man, I feel like an idiot now. At the start of this whole series, I'm like, oh yeah, man, Dolores is going to lead a rebellion. It's going to be awesome. I didn't know there was going to be multiple time warps. I don't even know if that's even true, to be honest.
Yeah, we can't confirm anything right now. But still, I still don't throw that theory out. I really do think she'll be a liberating force.
Yeah.
But It's so hard to tell at this point.
It's so deep, and like, look how much we're analyzing with 2 episodes. Imagine it's gonna get longer. Our episodes are gonna get longer and longer from here.
Yeah, with more ranting and raving from this guy at least.
Jeez.
And like, the show's got this hooks in me so much. Like, I've never watched anything twice, and this is the second episode I've watched twice already.
Yeah, so
it's crazy.
So hopefully episode 3 gives us much more context. But yeah, that's all I got to say. What about you, Trev?
No, I'm done too. Or I'll go on for too long if we don't shut her down.
Perfect. Well, to you guys, smash that like button. Comment down below. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Let me know what you agreed with, what you didn't agree with, and I'm sure we will get back to you. And yeah, take care, everybody.
See ya. Thanks for all your support.
Yes. Peace.